Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, August 10th. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief.
Good morning, Carl.
Well, this is the first week without the Olympics in a while. What's your best? Give me a couple takeaways, Tom.
My takeaways from the Olympics, I actually watched a decent amount of it, and I didn't see a lot of the woke, politics. I watched a lot with my kids. We watched. They got kind of sick of the swimming after a while, and some of the
I love the swimming
sports. So we watched some volleyball, we watched some handball, we watched some.
Don't tell me you watched badminton.
We did. We love playing badminton in the backyard. So they were very interested to see it played at that level. So,
well, Tom, the New Yorker had an essay. I think we linked to it on our front page about who wants to watch badminton, and then this great event where the gold medalist breaks down in tears. He beat a competitor from China, and it turned out to be great sport and great television.
Well, in the U.S. ended up winning the most medals, right? Topping China by one. Thanks to the women's team. The U.S. men's team did not perform, particularly the track team. They won one gold, and it was just in a relay event. No solo golds for the U.S. men's track team, Carl.
Well, wait a minute. There's an asterisk there, Tom. I wrote about this in my morning note. So the pole vaulter who competes for Sweden is really an American, and he won gold. And an American won silver. No. So Americans won gold and silver in the pole vault, a glamour event. And his mother's Swedish. There's nothing wrong. He's competed for the Swedish team for several years, but he was born and raised in Louisiana and competed there and learned a pole vault in Louisiana. So I would say that, and the guy who won the 100-meter dash is born in Texas. Now he's got again, African-American father and a Italian mother. He's raised in Italy, so he legitimately competing for Italy. But if we wanted to, if it had come down to it, and we were one behind China, I think we could have been one of those two.
He moved to Italy when he was an infant. That doesn't count.
He's American born, but bruh.
All right. Well, listen, what about the wokeness, Carl? I mean, obviously the ratings were terrible, and that can be attributed to the fact that they were, the Olympics were held halfway around the world, and with social media, I mean, most of the stuff actually was spoiled. You'd see it on social media or get alert on your phone of what would happen. So, but there was, that wasn't the whole story. It did seem like there was less of a push to watch the Olympics this year.
Well, there were two things. The one you mentioned, I'd wake up, I wouldn't look at alerts on my phone. I was being very careful, but I'd wake up, read the Washington Post sports page, the printed page, and it's telling you an event that NBC is going to air that night. It was like They were often behind by 24 hours. So it was the suspense was lost. But the other thing was, Tom, the crowds. We learned this from baseball and football during the lockdown. Crowds matter. Enthusiastic. The swimmers are having trouble not till the very end did they break any world records, because the crowds inspire athletes and they inspire us, and they contribute to the ambience of it. And having these events take place, these empty stadiums and empty gyms, it lost a lot of luster, I think.
All right. Well, speaking of the Olympics, Carl, the Washington Post has an editorial this morning. We've already turned our attention to the next Olympics, which are the Winter Olympics, which are going to take place in 6 months in Beijing. So quick turnaround back to it. But will the U.S. be participating in those games?
Well, this is interesting. I hadn't given that any thought. Sally Jenkins, who also writes for the Post and is a very acclaimed and respected sports columnist, she said it'd be shameful to do it and for the United States to go there. And what's happened since the Olympics were awarded to China is that the country's become much more bellicose and belligerent. You have concentration camps now of mostly Uyghurs incarcerated all over the country. The president of China has spoken, about bloodying, increasingly bellicose language, threatening war, not to mention, an increased nuclear program.
Crackdown in Hong Kong.
Threatened to go to war with Australia over some diplomatic slight that no one even understood what it was. And Taiwan, threatening Taiwan. And that.
Well, and the little pandemic thing too.
Well, neither Sally Jenkins nor the Post even mentioned the pandemic, but this idea that it either escaped from the virus escaped from a lab in Wuhan or a wet market, which the Chinese government had promised to crack down on. I mean, nobody points out that wouldn't be much of an excuse either. And then continually lying about it. And in recent weeks with Russia, going on social media and promulgating the lie that this started at Fort Detrick in the United States. I mean, this is it's a rogue regime. And the question is, do we want to reward it? China was given.
Hold on. What is the answer? Do we want to? I mean, if you were running the show, if you were advising Joe Biden, what would you advise him to do? Should we pull out of those games?
Well, the idea was that when Beijing got the 2008 the Summer Games, that it would liberalize the country. It did the opposite. And it gives China's leaders a chance to show that their system works and that we're too weak to do anything about it. In other words, you're contributing to the concentration camps. You're contributing to the demise of freedom in Hong Kong. You're contributing, if you go to these Olympics, to maybe the perilous threat to Taiwan. And so the argument is that we can't go and that it's irresponsible to go. And I think, I don't know what I do, Tom. The other side of it is that these athletes train for their whole careers. And there's still athletes who, because the United States because the boycott in 1980, when the Olympics were boycotted, they were in Moscow. The United States didn't go, neither the Western nations. The Soviet Union retaliated by not sending their best athletes in 1984. And you had a whole generation of track and field and swimmers who really didn't get their due. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think President Biden's going to have to confront this and figure out what to do. There's no easy answer. What do you think?
I think, again, I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it until, now or recently. But my initial gut reaction is we should. I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
should go or should not go?
We should not go. Okay. We should boycott the games. I mean, I think we have to. It's one of the signals that we can send to China that, listen, we're not tolerating this kind of behavior anymore, whether it's human rights, whether it's the lying about COVID, whether it's the, crackdown on Hong Kong. This is one of the tools in our toolbox. And I get it. It's not great for the athletes, but maybe we could put on an alternate type event in the United States where our athletes get to compete and, win prize money. And there's it gets publicity and they don't feel like they've missed out on a generation. I get it won't be the same thing, but it could be something that would be similar. And I don't have a problem with that. I think it might actually be a good thing. So that's my gut reaction to it. I would like to reserve the the ability to change my mind if I think about it further, but it would certainly send a strong signal to China, and that's something that I think we need to do, need to continue to do when we see them misbehaving on the world stage.
Well, and I like you. I hadn't been thinking about this until recently. Sally Jenkins made some powerful arguments. So did the Washington Post editorial board. Other people will in the future. Ultimately, this decision, I believe, will be Joe Biden's, and in some ways, it's his first, sort of most visible geopolitical decision he'll make in his first year in office. So I think we should all stay tuned.
All right, we'll leave it there. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics.
I'm Carl Cannon, Washington bureau chief, and this has been the Real Clear Politics Takeaway for Tuesday, August 10th, 2021.